This morning, our opening speaker, we'd like to welcome Dennis McLerran, who's the Regional Administrator for US EPA Region 10, and he was appointed RA by President Barack Obama and was sworn in February 2010. Prior to joining EPA Region 10, which includes the states of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Alaska, and also tribal governments in the Pacific Northwest and Alaska, Dennis was Executive Director of the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency. And I know just from chatting with folks from Region 10, a strong interest in biofuels and alternative transportation fuels. So with that, I welcome Dennis McLerran. Thank you.
Well, good morning on this early Wednesday morning. Hopefully I won't put you back to sleep. We'll wake you up, and it's really great to be here. Thanks for having me here at this great event with innovators who are doing such smart work. I love being with groups like this because it's the right work. And looking over the agenda for this event, this is really a packed, solutions-driven agenda. And we're at EPA just thrilled to be a part of this event and part of what's going on in this sector. I've been doing environmental work for all of my career, and I'm fascinated by and track a lot of the work that's going on in this sector. And it's great to see these topics getting this profile, this kind of attendance, this kind of energy around these issues. So pat yourselves on the back, you're doing the right work. A few weeks ago, when I looked over the agenda, I almost thought I really didn't need prepared remarks because this is the kind of stuff that really does excite me in the work that we do at EPA Region 10. But I did do prepared remarks anyway. But fair warning, I feel like I'm amongst friends here, and feel like I'm not going to have to hide my inner nerd about digesters and the kind of work that is shown up in the showcase upstairs. Also, I'm a bit of a technology nut and a gearhead, and for me, this event is a little bit like the Detroit Auto Show for digesters. This is, instead of Ferraris or Corvettes, we've got, the latest electric car technology. We've got the latest in digesters and chippers and shredders and sorters and all kinds of great stuff up there. And I did walk through this morning, so it's great to see this really take off. You might even say that I'm so into this area because I'm genetically predisposed to be there. My grandmother back in the 50s was a dedicated organic gardener and a composter, and so I grew up with that up in Selah, Washington, up in eastern Washington, and she even avoided pesticides in her gardens by sending away for praying mantises and putting the praying mantises out in the vegetable garden and in the rose beds and so on. And so she was way ahead of her time way back in the 50s, and I grew up with it, and it's great to see those simple technologies that were in the backyard being applied now in a much bigger way, in a much more sustainable way for our economy. So I think if you're concerned about the conservation of resources, the conservation of taxpayer and ratepayer dollars, and perhaps the future of the planet as well, this event would appeal to a broader audience than even this group. And that so many people are here in this group this week tells me that the movement that BioCycle represents is growing, and it's growing in a way that would happen with or without the federal government, but with the federal government we can work together and make it grow faster, better, and in a more solid way. And I'm happy to say that we are involved at EPA all the way up to Lisa Jackson's level in Washington, D.C., and Maddie Stanislaw, who's our assistant administrator for waste. This is the kind of work that we are committed to, want to see mature, want to see be successful. So again, it's in our view really critical environmental work for the 21st century. So pat yourselves on the back. We think you're doing the right work. We think it's the kind of work that we need to get behind and foster at EPA. And with over 7 billion people on Earth today, there's a lot of work to be done in this arena. How are we going to house and feed those 7 billion people? How will we support the growing energy needs of those 7 billion growing to 10 billion people sustainably? And in the past 50 years, humans have consumed more resources than in all of previous history. And the global ecological footprint in some estimates is exceeding biocapacity by as much as 25%. So we've got to have new solutions. We've got to have new ways of doing business. We know that we need to be a lot smarter about the use and reuse of our increasingly valuable materials, including what we've historically called waste. And that's really why we're all here today. Many of the methods and technologies that we see upstairs in the exhibit hall will drive the sustainable and durable resource conservation efforts that will hopefully provide the water, the fuels, the nutrients, and the materials the world will need to support the 7 billion people today and the 10 billion people that we know are going to be on the planet soon. So it's challenging and it's exciting stuff, and as you look around this room and the exhibit hall upstairs, you realize that here in the West, the waste to resources trend is already blossoming into markets, and that's a great thing to see. Some of the work is pretty simple if you think about it, with solutions on a larger scale than my grandmother had, and things that we should really have been thinking about on a larger scale decades ago that were happening in a very small scale then. Recovering food that was otherwise destined for the landfill, becoming fuels like biogas and biodiesel, and compost for erosion control and bioremediation and carbon storage. It seems to me that this movement towards sustainable materials and waste management is our smartest work on climate change, because it's the incremental steps where we create habits and habits become real movements, and that's what I think this is all about, is moving this to a larger scale and making it become a reality in more and more places. With over 40% of our domestic greenhouse gas emissions attributable to the life cycle provision of goods, materials, and food, this is a movement we can't afford to watch from the sidelines, and we can't afford to stand by for two reasons that you all know better than I do. First, it's right for our communities and it's right for our planet, and second, there are markets for the products that you're helping to produce with your creative reuse and recycling of materials. I believe that what we do on the local level in managing waste streams and coming up with alternative uses for what's historically been thrown away or ignored is the environmental work of the 21st century. I think this is where it's at in terms of solving the critical problem of greenhouse gases and using our resources more wisely. Those of us in the federal government are learning a lot by watching your efforts, by participating in conferences like these, by learning about what you're doing and then helping to promote it. And we're trying to determine how we can help build on and replicate your results here nationally. So that's a good thing for us to be promoters of what you're doing. What we all know intuitively is that when it comes to organics or any waste stream, the best leverage point for both cost savings and environmental benefits is, of course, through source reduction. By preventing the waste in the first place and by better utilizing our finite resources. EPA's role in helping communities and industries achieve their source reduction goals comes from the aptly named Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. We call it RCRA, which is where our Sustainable Materials Management team our Sustainable Materials Management Initiative, which includes the Food Recovery Challenge, which you'll hear more about later today during the Sustainable Food Management session after lunch happens. In fact, I'd like the folks from EPA that are here to stand up and raise their hands so that you guys can interact with some of my team as the day goes on. But I'm particularly intrigued by this work because food waste is the single largest and least recovered waste stream in the U.S. The USDA says that about 40% of everything produced or imported for human consumption ends up in the landfill where it produces methane. Think about that, 40% of everything that gets produced ends up in landfills. Think about the environmental impact of producing the energy-intensive food we buy, the water and air pollution, the water withdrawals, the pesticides, the manufacture of fertilizer, the transportation and storage that's all involved in that food production. And of course we have to eat, there's no doubt about that, but there's a lot of impact and a lot of energy used in that process. And so 40% of that production going to waste becoming unused methane is just not a sustainable way of doing business, and we've got to do better. And it's equally unacceptable that less than 3% is recovered as compost. Not to mention that much of this food is still wholesome and edible and could be used to feed the hungry who live in every community in America. We can do a much better job on that. So as part of an overarching sustainable food management approach, the EPA Food Recovery Challenge's goals are to help businesses save money through reduced purchasing and food waste disposal fees, support communities by using surplus food to feed people, not landfills, and reduce environmental impacts by, for example, composting inedible food waste or adding it to a digester. So I encourage you to attend this afternoon's session to learn about what EPA is up to, and perhaps to pick up some new resources like a source reduction toolkit to help you hit the ground running. Ashley Zanoli, who stood up just a little while ago, is going to be doing that presentation this afternoon. The major point here is that we do need a systems approach to the materials and wastes we manage. A systems approach that causes all of us to step back and consider all inputs and outputs in any system for a more holistic approach. It's also important to consider the interactions between elements in a system to avoid unintended consequences, so our solutions don't become the source of new problems. As a society, we need to understand and ferret out the systems connections between organics management, renewable energy, and the environmental benefits of greenhouse gas reductions and nutrient management. You guys are all doing that work, and that's why we're here today, to continue to rethink how we use our resources today and with an eye for the growing demands of tomorrow. None of these problems are new to you, and despite what you might hear on the evening news, the EPA's job is to find solutions to human and environmental health problems like these, so we're really glad to be involved in this work. So with that, let's transition over to and talk about gas a little bit. Fun stuff on gas. At our landfills, at our dairies, at our wastewater treatment plants, we produce a lot of gas every minute of every day. And a lot of that gas is methane, and typically most all of it ends up in the atmosphere, where at over 20 times the greenhouse gas potency of CO2, it warms the planet. And why should we let an essentially above-ground fuel that's already located at industrial sites go unused? Why shouldn't we capture every last molecule that we can of it to power generators and vehicles or home furnaces? We should be doing that. And admittedly, it costs money to capture, and it costs money to clean it and to compress it and put it into CNG or even LNG. But over the long term, don't you think that that is probably better than the costs of drilling and fracking and all of the side issues that are created by that? I really don't have all the answers to that, but that's what this group is working on, and I congratulate you guys for working on those issues. And I would conject that what stands in the way of widespread use of biogas is just an immature market that fails to account for the long-term externalities of our traditional way of extracting and consuming fossil fuels. And that biogas market is growing. I heard some good news this morning from folks that are working on various projects, but in 2000 there were less than 30 anaerobic digester projects in the whole U.S., and by the end of 2011 there were 176 manure-based digesters operating, which generated enough energy to power over 36,000 average American homes for a year. And this growth is fueled by public and private sector innovators like you, who see an opportunity to save ratepayers money, bring additional revenue streams to dairymen and public works departments, and to do something about climate change. There are a lot of people here at this conference and around the Northwest that are committed to this work. People like Matt Krumenauer at the Oregon Department of Energy that we're going to hear from later. Jim Jensen, Craig Fear, and Chad Kruger from Washington State University. Qualco Energy, ANGAR, and a lot of others that have exhibits at this conference are making the Northwest the center of the biogas revolution. And this particular revolution is centered around that most noble of technologies, the anaerobic digester. And I think there's a real simple beauty in digesters. When Matt Krumenauer and his team at the Oregon Energy Office are showing, what they're showing is that just with a scrubber and a compressor, a digester at a facility like the Columbia Boulevard wastewater treatment plant can fuel generators and buses. And that's what John Sayers and Darrell Williams at Qualco Energy, with a dairy up in Monroe, Washington, are proving as well. And they're looking at the potential to fuel traditional diesel trucks with their dairy-grown renewable natural gas. By capturing the methane and using it to displace the greenhouse gas benefits, to displace diesel, the greenhouse gas benefits of projects like these are significant and ought to count for something in the marketplace. And we're working hard at EPA to find ways to crack that nut. How we monetize the environmental benefits that are derived from these commodities is the trick. And I know that many of you spend long hours on these questions, folks like Dave Soderlund of WSU Energy Office. It's fascinating to me that so much of this work is getting done now with, despite a real lack of clarity on the credit side on this. And I don't know if he's here today, but I want to quote something on this point from Matt Bond, the president of the Water Environment Federation, when he spoke to a reporter about a digester project at a local wastewater utility in the East Bay in California. He said, instead of thinking of what we do as waste disposal, we are beginning to understand that wastewater treatment plants can be recyclers and, in fact, generators of valuable commodities like renewable energy, recycled water, compost, nutrient fertilizers, and even biodiesel. That's really BioCycle in a nutshell, isn't it? And that closes the loop on organics and getting the most out of our resources. And to be fair, EPA's role in this has mostly been as a cheerleader and a promoter. But I think we can do some great things as a cheerleader and a promoter on this. And clearly, some of our things like our Clean Water Act requirements do drive the need for facilities to manage their waste in a way that protects the waters of the nation. And the innovations that we're seeing here, as I mentioned earlier, are spurred somewhat by these laws as well. Where possible, they're also assisted by the carrots of some of our grant money, and sometimes they're encouraged by the nudge of our regulatory stick, which we do use occasionally to push people in the direction of looking for innovative solutions to environmental problems. But whatever the motivation, we have some serious waste management problems to solve, and problems that really could become opportunities with the right market conditions driving the right investments in new technologies. And dairy waste is one of those opportunities and problems. And as you know, probably most of you know, nitrate and phosphorus-laden runoff from dairies and feedlots and even hobby farmers has made many streams and other surface waters bad places for fish to live, and has closed hundreds of acres of shellfish beds up in Washington State when we don't control the nitrates and other pollutants that are coming out of those operations. And I think there are potentially significant human health impacts from nitrates in groundwater as well. Significant problems that we need to resolve. An effective nutrient management plan for dairies and these operations is an important tool, but a lot of dairies are asking themselves, isn't there something better than that? Isn't there a better way? And I think it's safe to say that all of us here think there is a better way than just a management plan. We think that there are multiple opportunities around the region to invest in on-farm or even community digesters that can create significant fertilizer and biogas revenue streams for farmers while solving some of the vexing environmental problems at the same time. And what EPA can do best at this point is to serve as a broker of the ideas and information about the on-the-ground environmental problems associated with waste and the technologies and the market opportunities available in turning that waste into worth. And that means, in some instances, helping to speed along the creation of new markets for commodities like biogas or fertilizer. And we've got some opportunities with collaborations that we already have at EPA. We've got a West Coast diesel collaborative that we put together a few years back to try and reduce diesel emissions up and down the West Coast because there are serious health problems with that. And with diesel at over $4 a gallon now, we think there's a real opportunity to put engine manufacturers and truckers together with pipeline owners and biogas producing farmers to get some dirty diesel exhaust out of the air. And isn't that the kind of work that we ought to be promoting and doing? So what are the market opportunities for that? We think there's a number of them, and Bill Dunbar, who's here, is working with me right out of the regional administrator's office to try and find some of those opportunities in our markets around the Northwest, promote those, and put our branding behind that. So hopefully we're going to see some real success in that. Together, I think we can accomplish more than any of us on our own, and we're looking at how we can work together to build a market for thoughtful, sustainable approaches to managing the organics that create the methane and the nutrients in the first place. And again, there's some great examples out there where markets have become more mature. Cedar Grove composting is a great example of making that a reality with composting markets in the greater Seattle area. And to me, it boils down to an issue of asset management, how we effectively and profitably turn waste streams into revenue streams. And it's increasingly likely that with today's challenges, the goals of our national environmental laws, like the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, and the Safe Drinking Water Act, might best be achieved in the marketplace. I think there's a lot of opportunities to drive this in ways other than just regulation. And not only do we have the ability to do this, Lisa Jackson, our administrator, has made this kind of work a top priority in the agency. So that's exciting to me. I know it's exciting to my staff as well. For me, the most rewarding work I've done in my career is not regulating somebody, it's finding collaborations, it's being part of collaborative efforts to solve problems and come up with mutual benefits, both for the environment and economically as well. So we're looking for those opportunities. And again, the West Coast Collaborative is one of those where we're trying to find those, but we're thinking that there's many other opportunities where we work with farms and dairies and others to promote this work. So I think we also have another collaborative, the West Coast Climate Forum, where we're working with state, local, and tribal government partners to drive climate action through new approaches to managing materials is a great opportunity. So we're looking for ways that EPA can and will help catalyze the changes in waste and materials management that are necessary to deal with today's environmental problems and to identify opportunities. We know that sustainable management of materials and waste can save money and make money at the same time, because it's at the bottom line that these environmental challenges really can get solved. One way to help expedite this journey is to put an economic value on the things we need, like clean air, clean water, and safe places to live. And I look forward to hearing David's remarks on that. He's a thought leader on ecosystem service evaluation, and I've heard him speak before, and I always love hearing what he has to say. So we need to be just as solutions driven in this area at EPA as any of you are in the audience. And so the EPA of today, particularly EPA in Region 10, is in the business of exploring what's possible. Our sustainable materials management team is here today not only to educate, but to be educated by you and by all of you about what the next wave of solutions might be. We want to be a safe place to broker the ideas and innovations that address environmental problems, and we've achieved a lot with this model already. And on that point, I want you to ask you to visit our booth upstairs, the EPA booth, and engage with our staff, and remember to attend the Sustainable Food Management session after lunch. And I think I've spoken about our enthusiasm for the systems approach to managing waste issues and the opportunities to address a range of problems that we face, but both me and my staff look forward to continuing this work with you as we face the challenges ahead. And again, I really want to say thanks to everybody here at this conference for the work that you're doing. It's the right stuff. It's the work that we should have been doing a long time ago, and you guys are finding the ways to make it successful, break through in the markets, and make it happen. So congratulations to you for the work that you're doing at this conference, and congratulations for doing the work that is not only meeting the needs of today, but looking out to the needs of tomorrow and to make this a more sustainable place for the long term. So have a great conference, and again, thank you for having me here today.